Dunc and Holder. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun here with you. If you want to get involved in the show, 504-260-1280. And Jeff, I was referring to making this Fantasy Wednesday. And since we're talking about NFL Combine and names being floated out there, I literally got a tweet about him, this player, probably 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. Let me just throw out the name. And we've downplayed any sort of connection to this player, but let me just throw this name out there. Jarvis Landry. He's been franchise tagged by the Dolphins. It seems very clear that they want to trade him. Right now, as a franchise tag, it's 1 year. I think his cap number is $14 million. He hasn't signed it. Of course, before he can ever be traded, he'd have to sign a contract. So you can't trade an unsigned player, a la, I'm bringing up my man crush again, Malcolm Butler. You couldn't trade for him last year until he signed a contract. So that's why, remember Sean Payton saying how, it's complicated, the situation's complicated, this, that, and the other. I mean, you couldn't trade for him. But what would you think if the Saints made a play for Jarvis Landry? Do you think it would be a good idea? Do you think it would be something they need to pass on, Jeff? I know where I stand, and yet I almost feel like maybe I could be convinced. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think he fits their receiver core. He definitely fits. Mike Thomas is the number one. You got Ted Ginn Jr., who's, let's face it, he's probably got a couple more years. I don't know how.
I'd say 2 max.
Right.
So
Landry's in his prime. And he's a slot receiver. I mean, he's a possession receiver, a very good one. It depends on what they would have to pay him. I think the way it's going to work right now, right? Miami has franchised him, and they're looking to deal him. So what would the contract work out? But I think he would fit perfectly into that receiver trio and certainly upgrade the receiving core. So, but I just wonder how much you pay the guy. Right now, the Saints might be all in, though, and there's nothing wrong with that. They feel like they've got this window here for the next 3 years or whatever with Breeze. You go for it. That's definitely the way Sean Payton thinks.
I feel like Jarvis Landry is Brandon Cooks 2.0. Cooks is faster. He knew the offense. They were highly potent with Brandon Cooks, and then they traded him. And look, at times we've seen Jarvis Landry be a little volatile. But would Jarvis Landry be open to a long-term deal, say, with the Saints because it's local ties? Where did he go to high school, Clyde? Lutcher, right. I knew he was up in the river parishes. Of course, he went to LSU. And would he fit? I think he would absolutely fit. I totally agree with you, Jeff. He would be the perfect complement to Michael Thomas. And that would – here's the thing. If they would get someone like that, I think it downplays your need for a tight end.
Yes, I agree.
Because we've seen when you've got players like Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks and, well, Willie Snead. Well, he's not around anymore, essentially not around anymore, even though he's still got 3 more weeks under contract with the Saints. But you put those guys together, and you see in 2016, they didn't need Coby Fleener to be a weapon. They didn't need Josh Hill to be a weapon. Now, 2 years ago, they needed Ben Watson to be a weapon because they basically just had Brandon Cooks and really nobody else. And if they do that, you don't spend on a tight end. You'd be spending on a wide receiver. It would also eliminate something you would need in the draft because he would be contract long-term, and then you're eventually going to long-term Michael Thomas. But I don't know. I don't know how much you want to pay Jarvis Landry. If you weren't ready to pay Brandon Cooks, how much would you be willing to pay Jarvis Landry? I think that's my dilemma with the whole thing.
Here's what I think. I think the Saints have probably done their autopsy on the 2017 season, and one of the things I think they delved into was their struggles on third down, which we all know has been well documented. They dropped off considerably. When was that all Brandon Cooks? I don't know. But I think whatever they determine is going to be a big influence on this offseason player procurement phase, and I think it could be a guy in the slot like a Jarvis Landry. Now, Mike Thomas ranked 4th in the NFL last year. He had 21 third down receptions that gained first downs, converted first downs. Jarvis Landry was tied for 16th with 16. So you throw him in there with Mike Thomas. Now defenses have a few more concerns than they had maybe defending the Saints in the past. I think that's going to be a point of emphasis for Sean Payton and his staff this offseason, improving third down, and I think Jarvis Landry would improve the Saints' third down offense.
Now, remember last offseason they had a decent amount of cap space, and they were able to sign a couple of, I'd say, pricey contracts. The Nick Fairley deal was pricey, yet market value. The Larry Warford deal was pricey, yet market value. I think the Saints have a couple of shots to do the same this year, even with Drew Brees. I mean, they're going to have to figure that deal out and get it done. And if they need to make some other moves, say they do unload Kobe Fleener, say they do unload Zach Strief, because that is something you've got to consider because you've got your starting right tackle. You've got Ryan Ramczyk. He's not going anywhere. And if Zach Strief were to, say, retire or they release him, you would save some money, and so you can put it toward the salary cap. But the Saints do have a couple of shots if they want to, say, trade for someone like that and sign someone in free agency. They do have the capital. Right now, with Drew Brees' $6 million already on the cap this year, they have around $32 million, this according to Over the Cap. So you add, say Brees' cap number is actually $20 million, and so you add $14 million to that. You still have significant room to where you can move around. And the Saints, we've seen them push the limits to the salary cap. I know they're going to do that with this window, with the players they have. You've got such good cheap players, might as well go out and get those couple of pieces to make this thing complete.
I think, well, the key is going to be what's the market for Jarvis Landry too, and what do the Saints, if probably going to have to trade for him, what do they give up?
That's true.
I mean, what do they give up? They don't have a second-round pick this year already. I personally am starting to lean towards, I wouldn't mind seeing them maybe trade down in the draft and reacquire that second-round pick, because I think this is a year where you could do it. You're already at the bottom of this first round. The drop-off is pretty considerable, I think, in this draft. Once you get past the top 10 or so, it wouldn't be the worst idea to trade down and pick up that second rounder, but to trade for Jarvis Landry, what do the Saints have?
You need ammo,
right,
to do it, and it's a topic worth broaching because I'm willing to bet that the Saints are going to make calls on him. I'm just willing to bet that. How far do they go? Do they go anywhere? I don't know. I'm willing to bet that.
But you're willing to say that at least it's worth them throwing because shoot, man. I mean, look at some of the other moves that we've seen so far this offseason. It's not like it would be with like what Kansas City or what the Rams are giving up for, Marcus Peters and guys like that, and just all the other moves. I mean, shoot, man, throw out that line, see what happens at least.
And if you're the Dolphins, do you really want to pay $14 million for 1 year for Jarvis Landry? So maybe they'd be willing to do a deal, and the market value might not be as high as maybe we thought. Oh, look, I remember last year I ripped the hell out of the Saints because I thought the market value for Brandon Cooks should have been more. And they ended up with a first-round pick at the end of the first round, and then another pick, and of course the Saints had to send over a pick as well. But who knows what the market is. And look, we've seen, not just with Marcus Peters, we've seen the Chiefs trade Alex Smith to Washington. So people are going to be moving and shaking, and this is the time of the year when people do the moving and shaking.
I thought it was interesting that what the compensation was for Marcus Peters, a fourth-round pick this year, the number 124 overall, and then a second-round pick in 2019.
And he's a star player.
Yes.
A Pro Bowl guy.
In his prime.
If you're the Saints and you could pull that rabbit out of a hat, yes, I'll give up a fourth, and I think you would do it. I don't think you'd have any problem doing it.
No doubt. Like I said yesterday, though, I was surprised only 2 to 3 teams, depending on what report you read, were interested in Marcus Peters because he's in his prime. I mean, this is the kind of guy you make a trade for, He's 24, 25 years old.
And how willing do you think Miami at this point is looking to offload players that they may seem as disruptive in the locker room? Because, I mean, obviously they got rid of Jay Ajayi, and there were all the reports about him, not jiving with what the coaches wanted to do and being just a regular back, and he wanted to be more explosive. And they were like, all right, well, we're going to send you out. How specifically Miami, how quick do you think they're looking to offload and bring in quote-unquote Adam Gase's type guys?
But if you're tagging a guy, you're willing to eat it. You're willing to pay him $14 million. I think that's part of it as well. So if worst comes to worst, you have to be able to live with yourself and eat that money and have him play for you for one more year. So I do think that there's probably, if you can't trade him, you got him for one more year, and you just kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Miami's doing. I mean, there's been some rumors that they might be looking to change quarterbacks in the quarterback market. What their motivation is would be key for me in moving on from Landry. But I will say this final thing about Landry. Forget about what his 40 time is, all those things that he's not a combine guy. He's just a really good football player. I mean, that guy knows how to win. He's a good blocker.
You're like John Gruden. He's just a football player.
He is, and I think that you throw him in there. I like Jarvis Landry the way he plays, and I think he's a winner. And I would definitely look into acquiring him if you could, but it depends on what the price is.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break right here on this show. I want to get to another player as well that's going to be hotly talked about among Saintsdom here in New Orleans. So we'll do that. Top of the 11 o'clock hour, talk with Will Guillory about the Pelicans. 11:30, we'll head up to Indianapolis and talk with our own Josh Katzenstein at the NFL Scouting Combine. So one more segment at hour number 1. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc Holder.